Oh, let me tell you something. Busting makes me feel good.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Blockbusting, the podcast where we love to hate movies. I am your host, Jay Light. I don't know why I'm doing this weird sing-song thing in my voice, but you know what? That's what we're going with today, folks, and that's what my guest Sarah White gets to hear. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Jay.
Very excited to have you on. I'm really sort of in this kick in the past few episodes of doing romantic comedies that are once beloved and still have a soft spot for a lot of people, and yet I've got some guests who don't like them. We just did How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days recently.
Yep. Just saw some clips of that interview. I'm excited to listen to the full thing.
Oh man, it's a good episode. And you have brought me another rom-com from the sort of like turn in from the 90s into the 2000s. 1997's My Best Friend's Wedding.
Yep. And I'm a big Julia Roberts fan, big Pretty Woman fan, and this one just did not hit the same.
For disclosure for you and for the home audience, I have never seen Pretty Woman. I've actually sort of missed the boat on Julia Roberts as America's sweetheart. Like I just never. I was looking up her work today. Obviously, you know, I've been familiar sort of peripherally with Julia Roberts, but like the thing that I know her at first, the first thing I think I ever saw her in was Ocean's 11.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting Julia Roberts introduction.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I feel like when I watched this movie, I had seen Pretty Woman. I really loved it. I also felt like I had kind of missed the boat, and I've never seen like Mystic Pizza either. Yeah. And I was like, I should really get on this. And that's kind of what actually inspired me to watch this movie for the first time.
Yeah. Why did you watch it for the first time? Obviously, you know, we're not seeing this in theaters. It came out in 97. So what was your experience like?
So I watched it in like peak lockdown. And it was like early pandemic and nothing was going on. And we hadn't over-consumed content yet to the point of boredom. So I was real excited to watch stuff that I'd missed or had been wanting to watch that was on my list. And so I watched it by myself. And I had really high expectations because I'm a big rom-com fan.
Okay.
I'm a big friends to lovers rom-com genre type fan.
Sure.
When Harry Met Sally is my favorite movie of all time.
Great movie.
So,
great choice.
Great movie. And so I thought this would be a surefire feel-good movie for me. And it did not deliver in the way that I thought it would.
It's definitely a movie that I was just talking about this with some other people before we started recording. It sets itself up in a way where even on the Wikipedia page, you know, it's described as a romantic comedy. Throughout every review of it, it's described as a romantic comedy. It's not really a romantic comedy. It is very much an anti-romantic comedy.
Yeah, it is. There's a big use of the word subversive in a lot of things you'll read about it. And it is... but also, yeah, it's like missing those components of a romantic comedy. I felt it was not super romantic, nor was it super funny.
Correct.
So it kind of wasn't checking boxes the way I expected.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head. That's kind of how I felt. I watched it this morning, and I, first of all, was. I do have to give praise to Julia Roberts for her performance here. Like, I can't deny, as much as I did not like this movie, Julia Roberts, I get it. I get why she was the star of the 90s.
Right? She's good at her job.
She's really good at her job. Unfortunately, in this movie, her job is playing a horrible asshole woman who wants to
totally
dive into this relationship that she has admittedly not given a shit about, laughed off completely for years, and all of a sudden, seemingly out of the blue, just based on a conversation she's having with her buddy George, thinks, oh, you know what? This is my chance. This is my time.
Yep. And then becomes the maid of honor at his wedding, which is just beyond me.
It's so... Yeah, she's the maid of honor. And then she's also sort of the de facto best man, which she says at one point in the movie, too. Yeah.
Yeah, she's everything to everyone. She's a complete narcissist. And so is he, to an extent. And I have no problem with rooting for characters that are anti-heroes or narcissists or not great people. Like, I love It's Always Sunny. You know, I have no problem with rooting for bad people.
Right.
But when you have a rom-com, you want to see why you're rooting for them, or you want to feel some sort of chemistry. And this felt devoid of chemistry. You're kind of like, all right, you guys kind of had a fling like 10 years ago, and now what are we waiting around for? What do we want?
Yeah, this movie doesn't really feel... I don't feel any chemistry between the leads. I feel really like there's... from like the standpoint of, we're supposed to believe everything that's happening. There's a lot of suspension of disbelief that has to happen, even just in like the way the plot unfolds, right? Like, Julia Roberts' character, Julianne, she shows up. She is immediately forced into this maid of honor role, which makes no sense. She's the guy, he's getting married in 5 days, which doesn't make, after just meeting and just starting to date Cameron Diaz's character.
Supposedly it's her best friend who they've traveled the world and done all this stuff together since college, and she has no knowledge of the wedding whatsoever.
None.
Completely in the dark.
This is the first she's hearing of it.
Yeah, right. And the reason also that she becomes the maid of honor was wild, that Cameron Diaz, has no other women in her life. And I kind of went in thinking that Kimberly was gonna be more of like a feminist character, and then immediately asks Julianne to be her maid of honor, says, I don't have any other women in my life, and then says that she calls her sisters vengeful sluts.
Yes.
And I was like, never mind, with the feminism is out the window. I should have known going into like a rom-com of this era, the expectations are not high, but I was like, oh.
Yeah, when you got Julia Roberts showing up serving a tray of beer at a baseball game with a tight sweater, that's not... I think feminism is out the window as like a concept that's going to get played with in the movie.
It's out of there. That scene is wild too, with her at the baseball game. It's kind of it's not like the most important scene in the movie, but there's a lot of flirtation like with the brother, and Michael's family all seems to really connect with her in a way that you don't see them connecting with Kimberly either. So it's kind of sus on all accounts.
It's really strange. There's a lot of, I think, to your point you were making earlier about how there's not really a lot of comedy in the movie, it's so clear when you see a scene like that where it's obviously being played for laughs, but really the only joke is that she's hitting on you, that she's hitting on all the she's hitting on the little brother, she's just being kind of coy. Like, those aren't really jokes, you know? Like, it's in the same way. I think a classic move that is construed as comedy that is not comedy at all is when there is music happening. And there's a lot of songs that go on in this movie. There's full-on musical numbers that happen.
You don't expect it, but there are. Like, starting out with this Bye Bye Birdie style opening number that's a little surreal going into it. And then the rendition of Say a Little Prayer with the entire family that goes on for way too long was giving, like, when a mariachi band approaches your table at a restaurant and you just feel the this is happening.
Yeah.
And I can't get out. The discomfort.
I can't escape. Ugh.
That's how I felt watching all of the musical numbers.
It's very strange to see all of these attempts at comedy, the musical numbers, the fact that like Julia Roberts as an anti-hero, rom-coms and anti-heroes are not like they don't fit. It doesn't really like, I can't think of an example of where maybe somebody else who's listening, or maybe it'll occur to us later, but like a rom-com with an anti-hero, like it just doesn't make sense. Like even, have you ever see You're the Worst, the TV show?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So You're the Worst is a show, it's a rom-com TV show. It's like 5 seasons long. It hinges on the fact that the two characters are really bad people in like bad relationships previously, who they find each other and they sort of learn to become better people through being together. I think. Okay.
I like that.
And where the difference is in something like that, or even like Forgetting Sarah Marshall, which is one of my all-time favorite movies.
Sure.
A great rom-com where you have Kristen Bell, who still looms large in the movie and is the villain of the movie in many ways. You still find ways to like root for her a little bit. You still find ways for her. You like want her to be happy. She's got this other relationship going on. But in all of those movies and TV shows and those other instances, you have these characters like you don't like, but they wind up with what they're looking for at the end of the movie. And I think part of where My Best Friend's Wedding really, really leaves you hanging is by not letting Julia Roberts get any kind of satisfaction. Like it's a rom-com. There's no romance for her.
Yeah. How did you feel at the end of the movie? Because I came out feeling bummed.
I mean, it ended the way I was hoping it was going to end. I did not want her to end up breaking up the marriage. Like I felt like that would have been the most obvious thing in the world. And it was nice for them to do like a little bit of a less obvious thing for a rom-com in the 90s, which is actually leave it on a note where nobody gets to succeed. But that also just leaves it's totally unsatisfying.
Yeah. Completely. I agree. It would have been too easy the other way around. But also, I think it's really hard when you don't really get a lot of depth and a lot of redeeming qualities for characters throughout the movie. So it's almost hard to know what you want as the viewer. I'm glad it didn't take the obvious route, but I mean, the two of them are kind of bullies for the entire movie. And it kind of makes me feel like, I don't want you guys together, but I don't want Michael with this nice girl who has done nothing but just be very kind and is a 20-year-old college student, which like is a whole other.
That's a whole other thing. Yeah, I'm really curious and concerned as to how they met.
Right? Is it specified? Because I'm not sure.
I don't.
If it is.
I don't think it is. My guess is that it is something related to Michael's career as a sports writer, because it's made very clear, like her dad is super rich, owns the White Sox. So my guess is that they probably met while he was on the job.
She mentions one thing about seeing him at a game, but it's unclear whether they met at the game. Regardless, bizarre. But yeah, you kind of don't know how to feel the whole time. So then it culminates, and you don't want them together, and you kind of want Julia Roberts to do her own thing, but it's still it's kind of bittersweet. It's not how I would picture feeling coming out of a rom-com. So I think that contributed to my distaste for this movie, where you go into a rom-com being like, I'm gonna feel good after this, I'm gonna have cynicism going in, hope for love coming out, and it felt the opposite for me.
I can see why. It's really it's a movie that if it was billed and marketed as a movie that is not a rom-com but is playing with the tropes of being a rom-com, then I feel like the response to it would have been totally different. And also, I don't know if people would have liked it as much. Like it really, I was really surprised to see how well it did at the box office. Like it was made for $38 million. It made almost $300 million.
Yeah, it's a lot. I get why people would like it. I agree. If it had been marketed differently, it could have been an entirely different situation. And I think it's like I couldn't get a grip on what parts of this movie were tongue-in-cheek and what weren't. Like back to the musical numbers, I couldn't in an Adam Sandler movie, I feel like this is something that would have been clear to me as a joke, like leaning into this absurdity of everyone at the table doing a full-length rendition of this song, not part of it. Like they go through the full song, and that would have registered because tonally it matches up.
Right.
But here I'm like, is it supposed to be part of the com, part of the rom-com, or is this like how funny is it supposed to be? And I feel like when you're questioning, is this a joke or not? I just don't know how well it fits into comedy.
I think I think there's a lot of the elements, like we really don't get into truly actual, I don't think comedy until maybe the last like 15 minutes of the movie when they're on this chase scene. I will give the movie a lot of credit. I do think for a wacky comedy as it's trying to be, it is paced like a comedy. Like everything's happening really fast. It makes a lot of sense for things to go as quick as they do. You really get right into it. I mean, you find out all of the stuff with Julia Roberts and Dermot Mulroney's characters within the first 10 minutes of the movie, and you're right in there,
away.
which is good, but also there's still filler in this movie, which is crazy to me. Like you have a movie that is just over an hour and a half. How is there this much filler in your movie? Why couldn't you fill it with jokes?
Right. It's either completely expositional or it's filler that's confusing and like very twisty and turny. And there's plenty of room for jokes, and they chose not to take that opportunity. It's
really strange. I think like I thought some of the stuff at the very end, like this, like I said, this chase scene, I thought there's some really fun, funny moments, but there's actually some like solid filmmaking in here too. Like I think that there's a lot of really good cinematography. I liked some of the ways, like there was that shot of Julia Roberts sitting in the hotel hallway smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
And you feel for her. Because
you do.
And I think the shot's set up in a way to feel for her. Yeah, it's definitely relatable. Right.
I think that is both the good thing and the bad thing about this film. And I do think that it's shot beautifully. Some of the cinematography and direction is just really well done. But at the same time, it's like the same way I can feel for Julia Roberts is the same way this movie is kind of designed to put me in this nightmare of what if I was Kimberly? Like, what if this was my partner and this was my situation? Because she's kind of the only one that seems to, and for most of the movie, have empathy. But then towards the end of the movie, that does admittedly change. But it's kind of anxiety inducing in a way where you're like, imagine if it was you, or if these two people, Michael and Jules, were just two people in a room that you were with doing this PDA, and one's about to get married. I cannot imagine.
Yeah.
Just that feeling.
What would, if you were in Cameron Diaz's shoes, what would you do, Sarah? What's your move if you got this Julia Roberts charming con woman showing up and trying to fuck with your wedding?
Oh man. I mean, I would not make her the maid of honor, I think would be step one. I think I would be nice at first. I think I could try her methodology of being overly sweet. But I think we'd have to have a talk. I think Michael and I would need to have a discussion about boundaries. There's one scene, I think it's in the karaoke bar, which is a really standout scene, but they're doing like inside jokes and they're almost like face to face. And Kimberly is just watching them. I think I would be like accumulating data to bring up in a later conversation of like, here are things that I've noticed over the past week, and I'd like to address them one by one.
Yeah. I think that's a good approach. I feel like if I were in Cameron Diaz's shoes and somebody came up, was clearly trying to steal my my future husband and also not letting me talk at the karaoke bar and then making me sing even after I had already said how much I hate doing karaoke.
It's hazing.
Friendship over. Yes.
At that bar.
Calling the cops.
Yeah. They just tag team bully her for a good portion of this movie, really for like the first half. Which is appalling. I mean, Kimberly comes out on top, kind of owning her karaoke moment. But yeah, the two of them going against her too, I think makes it really hard to root for either one of the protagonists or for them as a unit, because independently and together they suck.
Yes. I wholeheartedly agree. And I do think there is I was reading some of the reviews of this. It's got a 71% on Rotten Tomatoes. It has made a lot of people very happy over the years.
Good. I'm glad.
Roger Ebert says that this is, I agree with this. One of the pleasures of Ronald Bass's screenplay is the way it subverts the usual comic formulas that would fuel a plot like this. I think that there's some truth to that for sure. I think that saying that it's one of the greatest romantic comedy films of all time, as some people do, is absolutely incorrect. I think.
Yeah, I do not agree with that. I'm glad it's brought some people joy. Yeah. That is always something that makes me happy. And I do think the script was unique, especially for its time. But even today, there are just almost too many twists and turns for me, too. I mean, you get kind of this hurried plot of Jules pretending that she's with George, her gay best friend, and then that ends but creates some jealousy. It feels like those subplots are moved into so quickly, kind of in the name of being surprising. And I think at some points it works, some points it doesn't, but you're kind of like getting jerked around a lot in the script. But I agree. You don't expect the ending. It goes against what you think is going to happen and how you're supposed to feel. And I can appreciate that, even though I did not enjoy my experience.
Now, I did find a critical review from Stephen Hunter, formerly of the Washington Post. And I'm going to read some lines from his review here. And I want to hear what, as somebody else who also doesn't like this movie, I feel like we're not quite as far down the I hate this movie rabbit hole as Stephen is. Just here we go here. Poor Roberts, pretty and perky as the day is long, hasn't a hoot in hell of bringing Julianne off. She's simply not actress enough. She doesn't have that suppleness that would enable her to sell the complexity of emotion, the jealousy, the irrationality, the meanness, and the intelligence. She never really seems smart enough to dream all this stuff up, and she never seems complicated enough to get away with it.
Okay, so I don't love the use of the word suppleness. I'd like to begin with that. Okay, that's super interesting. So he's kind of saying she's not like complex or like vicious enough to pull this, or smart enough to pull this off.
That's what it seems like he's saying. He seems like she, as an actress, is just not quite of conniving enough to play a character like this, which I disagree with. Even though I think he's right about the movie being bad, I think that Julia Roberts is probably the besides Rupert Everett, who everybody is rightfully praising, I think the second best part of this movie. Yeah,
I both agree and disagree. I'm deciding how I feel as we speak, because I do think it's an interesting move to bring America's sweetheart in to play this kind of villainous character. And in that way, I think maybe it doesn't fully register. But in another way, I think that's kind of fun, like taking her and making her this maybe more real type of person who is just so desperate that she's come to this point. But I do think those things get mixed up. It's like she is and she isn't the right person for this role. And I think that falls into some of the other feelings I had about this movie, where like it does and it doesn't in a lot of ways. And you gotta pick a lane, and this movie did not pick a lane in a lot of departments. So I think, she's a little bit like sweet and girl next door to play this, but at the same time, I could see how that's the fun of it for people.
I think that's what feelings. I think Julia Roberts is the right actress for a role like this, because you are playing with her as an archetype in addition to playing with like who she is in the public eye. It in some ways, this is probably going to be the most like film criticky thing I say on this episode. It's like Tom Cruise in Top Gun Maverick, where like he as the character of Maverick is obviously like he's dealing with aging. He's dealing with the trauma of what happened with Goose back in the day. There's all this stuff that he's dealing with in the character, but also the film's kind of a commentary on Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise dealing with being an aging movie star and trying to achieve things that he just like can't achieve anymore, but still trying as hard as he can.
Yeah, there's something to that for sure. And I think part of the issue is that Julia doing her best and trying to embody all of these things is also not really mirrored by Dermot Mulroney, who is kind of like, what's the like one-dimensional?
He actually, this is who Stephen Hunter is really going in on next, and I think this is the only other part of this review I'm going to read. Well, actually, no, there's one other part I want to get to, which is I will just comment very quickly. They hated the way that people were costumed in this movie. Steven did, and I think that's
the costuming.
I think that putting Julia Roberts in sunglasses as much as she was put in sunglasses in this movie is a crime, and I don't know why they decided it was a great idea to cover up the eyes of your lead character as often as you did in a rom-com.
That's so true. I didn't think about that, but she definitely was wearing sunglasses a lot. Yeah, she's a really good eye actress too. And I feel like we lost some emotion because of that.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Let's get into this Dermot Mulroney Stephen Hunter quote. And is the love object of all this Sturm und Drang. Mulroney is hopelessly at sea. Who voted this guy a movie star? Did you people? Shame on you. Mulroney, like Roberts, lacks the ability to project complexity or duality. There's no light of thought in his eyes and no spontaneity to his presence. He's supposedly a sports writer, but not one thing he says suggests he's capable of slinging a cliche, much less getting a score right.
Oh my God. I love it. Poor Dermot. I feel like he tried to do his best with what he was given. But yeah, I think it's one-dimensional. He seems to love his job that you're told doesn't pay super well, but he loves it. Like he's passionate about it. So he's sticking with it. And I think that's kind of the one thing we get about him as a person, as an individual. And then we don't see that at all.
Mm-mm. And now I was looking at some reviews of this movie from the general public, who, as we've noted, really resonate with this movie in a way that I'm kind of shocked by. There's so many people who think this is one of the greatest rom-coms of all time. Some people who absolutely are like floored by this movie. And I did find some reviews on Google that I think I want to do a little armchair psychology with you of why these people like this movie so much.
Oh, my favorite activity. I'm ready.
So this is a 5-star review from Evelyn Schmall. I am absolutely in love with this movie. The realization of feelings and not getting chosen by the man you love really hit home for me. And it's relatable for a lot of people. Julia Roberts is obviously phenomenal, and she just makes the movie that much better. You're truly missing out if you don't watch this amazing and classic rom-com. I 100% suggest it. Besides one or two uses of strong language and smoking, the movie is very appropriate. If you're like me, have some tissues nearby. It's such a great movie. Now, I have a feeling there's a second part to this review, but just off of that alone, why do you think that Evelyn likes this movie so much? If you had to guess.
Oh, Evelyn's been through something and does not smoke.
Evelyn hates smoking, and also
hates smoking.
Has some unrequited love.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I can understand how she would connect to this, but I find that interesting because I mean I was feeling for Kimberly, as well. So that's a complicated emotion. I'm not sure whose shoes Evelyn has been in. I'm assuming Julia Roberts, but.
I think this is going to sort of give away where Evelyn's headspace is.
Oh, no.
I would also like to add my opinion on the character that Julia Roberts plays. Some people may think she is pretty evil for sending out the fake email and trying to break up Kimberly and Michael, but she was in love. And I do agree that Michael is better for Julianne than for Kimberly. He took away her career, college, and family. It was selfish. She was 8 years younger than him, and she had a life ahead of her that he should not have been willing to take away. What would you not do for love and to save the person you love so much? In the end, she stepped back, and yes, this is the right thing to do, but it is still heartbreaking to see her so sad at the after party of the wedding. She is heartbroken, and that is that. I would have done what I could to win Michael over, but Julianne lost the war.
Wow. I feel like Evelyn tried to break up a marriage unsuccessfully.
I think Evelyn's a homewrecker a little bit.
I think it's possible. I mean, she's clearly got some empathy. I don't think she's wrong about Kimberly either. That she was going to give up a lot of things. For what, really? But I get it. I understand the connecting with the desperation for this last ditch attempt and to get the one you love before they're gone. But at the same time, like, would you send the email? I feel like Evelyn would send the email. Which is destructive. I
think Evelyn would send the email. Evelyn would do Evelyn would do basically everything she could, I think, to
everything except smoking.
Yeah. She would no smoking, but she will ruin a marriage in order to have some requited love.
Sure.
I have one other review that I think is this is. There's a lot of people who actually two more reviews. Sorry. There's a lot of people who get a lot of joy out of this movie. Some of it I think is because of their own lives are bad. Like Eugene Barang, who gave this 5 stars. I don't know when to stop watching this. My job is awful. My attempted relationship stole from me, but I will believe in love, hopefully. Great, happy, joyful, and relaxing.
None of those. Let's start with relaxing. I felt both bored and stressed by this movie. It's hard for me to explain why I was bored because, as we discussed, a lot of things happen and a lot of things happen kind of quickly. I think it was more in the first half where it is a little more your classic rom-com. And they're just kind of bullying Kimberly. And I was like, I'm kind of just tired of watching this. But I think a lot of it is not so joyful either. I think it's anxiety producing.
It is,
and a bummer at times.
It's really mean-spirited.
Yeah, it is. It is a mean-spirited film that's mostly 2 adults shitting on this college student.
They're being so mean to this 20-year-old for no reason.
Trash her. But wow, I am so interested in what Eugene connected with so hard and how those feelings of being upset did not permeate his viewing experience at all, it would seem.
Here's what I think is I think Eugene was part of the relationship that Evelyn busted up. And, you know, he had his love taken away, but he still gets to enjoy this movie, hate his job, hate his life now that the love of his life has been taken away by Evelyn. But you know what?
Yeah.
At least those two are not quite in the same boat as Sue B, who gave this movie 5 stars, but actually had a negative review. I liked the movie, but I am highly upset with the ending. What the hell? I am so upset. Oh my gosh. I really want to have a serious talk with the producers because no way. Ugh.
I hope she gets to have that serious talk.
I
hope
so.
They talk it out. I mean, it is. I know I've said it a million times, but it like you don't come out feeling well. Like It's a cool idea, but again, if it's advertised as a rom-com and you come out feeling like your hopes got dashed, you came in here just wanting to see 2 people fall in love no matter what, and you don't get it.
You don't.
So you get something kind of taken away from you at the end of the movie. So I empathize, but I also did not love the other parts of the movie.
Fair. Now, what do you think people should watch instead of My Best Friend's Wedding if they do want to come away feeling, you know, happy and joyful and relaxed?
Yeah.
The way they should after a rom-com.
Right. So by coincidence, my favorite movie of all time is When Harry Met Sally, which I think people should watch. It's a good friends to lovers, not quite
Great
the same,
movie.
But it's excellent. But my favorite rom-com in my like subgenre of favorite movies is Maid of Honor, which has Patrick Dempsey and Sean Monahan.
I was like, who's in that movie for a sec? Okay.
Yeah, and it is the same movie as My Best Friend's Wedding to an extent, gender swapped. But it is so delightful. They go to Scotland. Both characters are really individual people, and you see their friendship a lot throughout the beginning of the movie, and it really makes you love them as friends. And I know we were talking about anti-hero before and anti-hero rom-coms, and Patrick Dempsey is a little bit of an anti-hero, not completely, but he like is kind of a womanizer, and it's not someone you would want to end up with someone who's a smart, capable woman. And I think that is also a criticism of that movie, but it's happy, it's really fun, you get fun scenery, and both protagonists are fully formed humans that have a relationship with one another and chemistry.
Well, I'm going to have to check that one out. I do remember when that came out and everybody was making fun of the title of it, but you know what? Now maybe I've been convinced by
it's
wanting to see the good version.
Yeah, in my opinion, it is the good version of this. I think you come out feeling better. I don't want to spoil it, but I think you get more of the ending that you want if you are in a position of being bummed out by the My Best Friend's Wedding ending. It's not quite as subversive, but it's a good straight to the point rom-com that I feel like now, having rewatched My Best Friend's Wedding, was trying to give the fans of that what they wanted, or give maybe people who weren't such fans of the ending what they wanted. They're like, we're going to redo it for the fans.
Finally getting a chance
for
here.
You guys. Yes.
Well, Sarah, as much as I was not a fan of My Best Friend's Wedding, I am glad that you brought it into my life. So thank you for showing me this movie.
Of course.
You're a wonderful guest. And where can the listeners find your stuff if they want to check it out on the internets and whatnot?
Yeah, you can find me on TikTok, on Twitter, on Instagram at haha_Sarah White. And you can find more stuff on sarahwhitecomedy.com.
Nice. Go check out Sarah's stuff. Go give her a follow. You can find me at Diet J on all the socials, at Blockbusting Pod on all the socials, and go follow the YouTube channel. That's where we're putting all the episodes when we wind this thing on down, so you can see all of the Blockbusting in perpetuity. Sarah, thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
So happy to have you. This has been Blockbusting. Go see something good for a change.